Waste Manager, and we'll be discussing the recycling programs, pickup centers, focusing really on the funding and the Rio Grande Recycling Center.
Okay, so as you're all aware, we currently, Pickens County, operates 3 public recycling drop-off centers, the Rio Grande, as well as the Solid Waste Center, and then a bi-monthly collection at Redstone. So what we're here today is to continue the conversation regarding the funding of the program, particularly at the Rio Grande Center, and perhaps pursuing eventually a cost-sharing agreement and a zero-waste study with them. So just to give you some background information, the county has operated these collection service centers for well over 20 years. We believe. I can never find an exact date of when we started, but it's been a long time. So this year, the county entered into a contract with Waste Management to privatize the collection at the recycling centers. This has resulted in a significant cost savings. Prior to Waste Management's takeover of the centers, the county was spending about approximately $350,000 a year to collect and transport those materials to the processing centers. Waste Management, their contract is $180,000 annually to collect and manage these centers. In addition, the conversion to single stream has resulted in an increase in 25% of recycling material at Rio Grande Center alone. So we're seeing an increase in diversion. We got together with the city of Aspen to conduct a survey. We wanted to see the demography, who was using the Rio Grande Center, and we conducted that at the end of July over a 2-week period. The survey showed 75% of the users were residential, while 25% were commercial users. 57% of the recycling coming into that center is generated within the city of Aspen alone. 89% of the commercial users were entities within the city of Aspen limits, and we found that they were bringing in significantly more recycling than a residential user.
That's by user, not by quantity, right?
Right.
By participant, not by
participant,
not by the amount that they bring in.
Right. Right. So additionally, the survey indicated 36% of the residential users who live outside of the city limits, 69% of those live within Pickens County, 13% were within Basalt, and 2% in Snowmass Village. Of the 6% of commercial users outside of city limits, they indicated their businesses were in Pickens County. Many indicated they were in the ABC. So we continue to explore a variety of ways to reduce the subsidy to the recycling programs. And this includes, of course, the recent privatization, switch to single stream and management of the centers, and then reaching out to partners to share in the costs. Recent meetings with the city of Aspen, we've discussed ideas on how best to partner and to move the program forward. And this includes developing a joint zero waste plan. Now, a zero waste plan seems to be the trend many communities are going to. And it's to lay out a baseline of what your diversion rate actually is at a given point in time, and then developing a plan on how to increase those diversion rates, setting goals over a period of years, and then how do you meet those goals. It's really a playbook on recycling and increasing diversion. And they have shown interest in developing that joint study. So we feel it's a worthwhile cooperative venture and a first step in pursuing that cost-sharing partnership. On the following page, you see a cost center budget. Right now we're estimating our annual budget with all 3 centers fully covered by the county at $172,220. If we were to pursue a cost-sharing budget arrangement, the city of Aspen's share would be $50,000 to $60,000. That's a 50% cost share. Just to give you an idea of kind of where we're using these significant cost savings in the recycling programs, we're looking to pursue other additional recycling diversion goals. Some of those programs include a pilot program we're working on putting together for e-waste collection and diversion. We call it EARN. It's employing people with cognitive disabilities to actually break the materials down within the county and then brokering the materials out from wherever this point of breakdown is. We're also looking at an in-house paint recycling program, taking in of the latex paint we get at the landfill through our household hazardous waste collection, and recycling our own paint for sale at a significantly reduced cost. And then our next big one is a pilot program for food waste recovery from local restaurants. So these we feel are very worthwhile programs to use these cost savings on. So I guess just kind of moving into the next recommended steps that we're kind of looking at. We feel a zero waste plan, a joint plan with the city of Aspen, is a good way to continue to move the diversion goals forward and to move our partnership with the city of Aspen forward. And then the zero waste plan would include the study which recommends how to best fund the center. So kind of going forward, you know, we expect probably to fully fund Rio Grande in the full amount for 2015. And then looking for you for recommendations how to move forward on that.
Questions? Michael, then George.
Kathy, could you explain exactly what zero waste? I mean, I don't quite get it.
Okay. That's the new buzz phrase in the solid waste industry. Many communities are putting together zero waste plans. And it's really, nobody's achieved it yet, but having zero trash, zero throwaway material. Everything is diverted, reused, composted.
Well, let's, so you mean once it's in the recycle stream, so you're not anticipating that residents have zero trash?
Right, but it's finding opportunities to recycle as much as you can.
So it's when it
compost,
hits the
yeah.
recycle stream that it becomes zero trash, meaning that you're not going to bury any
Right.
of the trash in the landfill.
Trying to get to zero burial of waste.
So it's essentially trying to find something useful for everything you collect.
Absolutely.
Okay.
LA County has a 95% zero waste goal at the moment, so.
They have a goal of that?
Goal of only 5% of landfilling.
And how close are they to that goal?
Last I heard, they were at about a 50% diversion rate.
Well, what's our diversion rate right now?
We don't really have a goal set, so that would be a good plan for the zero waste.
Don't
to
we
set
have a
goals.
diversion rate, estimated diversion
At the
rate?
landfill, Pickens County, we have about a 60%.
60%, so we
Yeah.
beat LA.
We beat LA in the county.
Without goals.
Without goals.
George?
I got a couple of questions. I'm just following up on Michael's question on the zero waste. There's sort of an assumption that when we use recycling, it actually goes into a recycling program, but doesn't a lot of this just get transported to a different landfill that does not get recycled? And so how do you track that zero waste philosophy to the actuality that it actually is going into a recyclable project versus just being buried in some other county or city's landfill?
Well, you know, that's part of the zero waste plan to set how you track that. We're working with Waste Management right now, and they provide reporting to us. And they invite you down at any point in time to come to their MRF where they're processing the materials. So it's a lot of auditing of who's processing and brokering those materials, but yeah, it can be done.
You have quite a range in terms of the cost for the study, from $80,000 up to $140,000.
Mm-hmm.
Seems like we need to tighten that up, and why is there such a large range?
Well, it really depends on how detailed you want to get. You know, we can scale the project however much we want to spend. It costs a lot of money if you really want to do a good, thorough zero waste study, and I've had a preliminary discussion with a company that does this. You can get out into the field and do waste sorts quarterly on an annual basis to see, and it's essentially you throw trash on the ground at the landfill and you sort it, and you weigh it. You know, you weigh the recycling, you weigh the food. Or you can simply go to like a desktop study, and they can collect data from people who are collecting recycling, and they just sort of disseminate it. So it'll really be up to us, and if we partner with the city of Aspen on this, what level of study and how much do you want to spend? That'll be a determination to make. I went on the high end here, I believe.
Do we know the long-term plans for the city in terms of the use of the Rio Grande? Do they want to maintain that as a recycling center, or would they like to utilize that space for some other use?
Brian Pettit and I had a meeting with the Environmental Health Department, CJ Oliver and Liz O'Connell, and Brian asked that question, and they said we are keeping it as a recycling center. Their thought is it would be hugely unpopular to close. And once they close it and move it to another use, they'll never get it back. So,
I would just add that in the absence of, what alternatives we might have to divert waste streams, so, in the absence of a study, I think that would be the answer. It's possible that a study would indicate, other methods that may improve. So, for example, maybe it makes more sense to have fiber, like cardboard, kind of crushing and collection sites throughout there, more convenient to the commercial core versus being in the Rio Grande. So I think, right now, knowing what we know, the answer is that Rio Grande would probably stay, but a study may indicate that there's other methods that may be more efficient and effective in terms of both collecting the materials and also processing them to ensure that they're recycled. That we don't know.
Rob?
Yeah, Michael.
So John, so the study encompasses an analysis of what our waste stream is. But you're also talking about an analysis of pickup points and recycling points also. So there's sort of what our resource and our methods is what it's going to be.
And that's why I wanted to highlight with George's question that any type of study like that is going to have to be process oriented, and that's why it may define a different kind of partnership for us in the future, as well as what our streams are and the opportunities are for those materials.
Steve and then Rachel.
I've been following the Swedish trash situation, and they use virtually 100% of their trash, and they're even accepting trash from other countries. I think mainly because they burn it for generating electricity and maybe co-generating heat for buildings, that sort of thing. And I remember somebody from Waste Management saying that they are in the energy business, not in the trash business. And so ultimately, to reach the zero waste, some sort of burning or pyrolysis or something of what we're now landfilling might be what gets us to the zero waste goal. I think the collection point is a key part of this discussion, because looking at residents of Basalt are 12% of the users, or whatever percent, 13% of the users. Number one means they're loading their stuff in their car down in Basalt, driving all the way up here, and then Waste Management has to pick it up and haul it all the way back down to Basalt. And it would make a lot more sense if we could find a new collection area in Basalt that is not at Waste Management facility in Willits, which is where I go, but it has limited hours, and we need something that's more convenient to the residents. So if we could come up with something like that, we could potentially divert 13% of the stuff that's going to Rio Grande right now. Also, a lot of those residents are probably Eagle County residents and not Pickens County residents of Basalt. So that's another thing. If we could get some money from Basalt or from Eagle County for this, rather than going after money from Aspen. To me, the residents of Aspen are Pickens County residents, and I think it's awesome that we have a problem because we're collecting too much stuff. That means we're being successful in diverting stuff from the landfill. And we just need to figure out a better way to manage it, I think. And I like the idea, like John suggested, doing in the commercial section, doing something there for the commercial users, or maybe just collecting the cardboard and compacting it, or something like that might be part of the solution.
That's why I note I made that up as an example. I don't know if it's a good idea.
So that's a discussion to have the city of Aspen and maybe with people, the business owners in the commercial core, to, you know, try to come up with a partial solution.
Rachel?
Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts on this. So they're a little bit wide-ranging. I'll try to get them in some sort of decent sequence. But, you know, Steve, it's true, City of Aspen residents, which I am, are Picken County residents too. But we should all note that none of our Picken County property taxes or sales taxes support the recycling center or the landfill. It is an enterprise zone, and that's under Tabor. So it has to make its own profit or pay for its own way. We cannot subsidize it, I think, without you have some occasional exceptions of infusions of cash or something like that, up to 10% or something like that. But so when we pay our property taxes and we pay our sales taxes, we are not paying for the operations of the landfill. And that needs to be really clear, because there's a sense that, hey, I pay property taxes, I should be able to get this service for free or this for a reduced rate or something, and it's just not how that operates. So to me, that really brings us back to the greater context of everything. And that, when I was on the city council when we changed the waste hauler ordinances that required pickup, and I remember the businesses in the downtown core coming in to say, well, wait a second, we recycle ourselves. Why make us have a contract to pick up outside our business when we can use the Rio Grande, we take it over there, the Gant, you know, a lot of places like that. And so I think we need to talk more in the context of that city ordinance and considering our own ordinance to require the waste haulers. And, you know, so this is just a fragment to me of the information we need to make good decisions. That zero reduction study can look at those types of ordinances. I mean, as Michael used the term, the methods of collection, the methods of reducing waste stream, and what we are allowed as a home rule charter to do with our waste hauling ordinances, what we're not allowed to do, and how could we beef it up without it being, quote, government service, and through the private sector that's already collecting from people's homes. So I really want to see that. You know, I used to work at the Aspen Airport Business Center in the sense that I had several storage units there for advertising material distribution. And as you might imagine, at the end of the season, most of that material gets recycled because it's not usable the next season. And we could never, I mean, so I'd bring that to the city and say, why don't you have a cardboard crusher there? Why don't you have a pickup location there? And they simply could never find any sort of location. They could never find any business or any square footage or anyone who wanted a center there. So I'm not opposed to looking, but I can just say it was a very difficult look before. And so when I look at this, I really need, as we go forward, to see the whole picture. And I think that any discussion with the city or Basalt or anything about cost sharing, they're going to need to see the whole landfill budget, the whole landfill master plan. You know, why do we have deficits? What, you know, no one's going to want to say, here, $30,000 a year for you without understanding the bigger picture of what all we're doing at the landfill, the life of the landfill, the same things that we're familiar with, the need for monitoring, the closure fees, everything like that. And that, for me, really relates back to what is a decision point here for us going forward, not today, but, you know, can we really afford to put the cost savings towards new programs? Do we need more of those cost savings to actually help fulfill the master plan? Do we need the cost savings to prepare for the closure rate? You know, so I like the idea of, quote, expanding our recycling program, but it's also, to me, a harder sell to tell people, we need you to contribute so we have cost savings so we can start new programs that don't pay for themselves. Mm-hmm. You know, this is a tricky sequence. And, you know, I think everyone would need to buy into the value of using their money that we call cost savings to now start paint recycling or food waste recycling or things like this. And I don't want to be promising programs we can't afford to start. You know, this looks like a $60,000, you know, savings additional, which, you know, should it come to pass. but how much will each of those programs cost? And what's their long time life cycle? And will 60,000 really cover it? Or are we going to start taking on more than we can achieve? Then we can't achieve it. Then the city says, well, why are we paying you 60,000 because you're not doing those programs? So I just don't see the full game board, in a way to make this happen. And, I also am back to the idea of, what ordinances can we use in the county that would bump the recycling with the existing haulers. For me, we need to see the whys in that survey. I don't know why the people from Basalt would bring them up here. And maybe that was asked and just not, put in here. But why? Why were those choices made? And the other bigger question for me, and again, the study should take account of it, but what is the lay of the land for this larger regional collection, waste hauling, recycling? We got hit, with changes that occurred when the new facility opened in Basalt. We were hit with changes when Eagle went to their system. Do haulers want to haul all the way to Grand Junction first rather than even stopping at the Pickens County landfill? And so I want to make sure that whatever we're pursuing, we understand that larger lay of the land and the recycling market and the waste hauling market, who is our competition. It's kind of like understanding the context of Pickens County Airport between Grand Junction Airport and Eagle Airport. I mean, we have to understand our relationship in the whole universe of these things. And it is a competitive market. And I'm just wary of setting up a program believing it's on sound financial footing and then finding out that from a competitive basis it doesn't play out the way we thought. So I can see moving forward with a study like this, but I think that the RFP and the scope and the goals and the outcome of that study have to be really very clearly delineated, and then we need to again put it in this context of the larger discussion so that we can do something valid with those results.
From what I'm picking up, I mean, we have the zero waste plan, but also working in and we've talked about it before, an overall strategic plan for the solid waste center.
Yeah, I mean, this is just one small piece
Yeah.
of what we do there. And, I think that it seems to be a goal moving forward that's in the background. We have not necessarily articulated it, but that the recycling become a entirely break-even operation. And it's never been an entirely break-even operation. It's been subsidized by other profit centers at the landfill, and whether that was construction waste or soils or these sort of things. And so we need to have that conversation, which then has to be in the context of the budget and the master plan as to whether we believe it should be a zero subsidy program, or is this something that should be subsidized by the true waste going into the, I'm not ready to say this has to be break even. The reductions in costs that we've already made using waste management have been very significant. Maybe it's not enough in that long-term context, but I think there's a lot with the relationship with the city of Aspen and us that it's going to take more than a little ask. It's going to take a big context and a big mutual agreement about the goals on the landfill and the recycling program.
I'll just weigh in on a few things. One, I think the point that you made, Rachel and Kathy, you reiterated it as having clear goals set for the entire operation of the Waste Management Center, with a prioritization of different programs and how they work in with the budget, and
You
seeing
meant
that
landfill, not waste management.
the landfill, sorry, yes,
Because that's a private company.
the landfill, and just having some clear goals as to how everything fits into the big picture. I'm all for some sort of study towards getting towards a greater diversion rate or zero diversion rate, if that's the catchphrase. But I think less of it has to do with the recycle center than other things. I mean, the reality is people that are at the recycling centers are recycling. You know, it has to do with home habits and other policies, as you stated, that, that are put out there, and policies that are effective and have goals that create change. I'd like to see what other communities are doing. You know, I was, as Rachel knows, she was, you know, on city council at the time, but I was one of the business people in the audience speaking up, saying, you know, what are the goals that we're setting here? And I talked very firmly about, let's look back at this 4 years from now, because Waste Management and other haulers were, and the city were saying, your prices are going to be reduced because you're going to be recycling more, therefore you're going to be hauling your trash less. And, you know, I've yet to see that study be done, whether or not our prices really were reduced as business owners, or if you take that same type of study to, you know, requiring curbside recycling for residents within Pickens County, which I think is on the table here for discussion, whether or not we want that to be a policy. But I think you really have to have the study focus a little bit on the habits of the individuals and how you change those habits and make it easy for those individuals. Because the getting to a better diversion rate has less to do with the recycling center and more to do with the people that aren't going to the recycling center and are just throwing their stuff in their trash, their cans, their bottles, their, you know, their cardboard, their newspapers, their whatever. So that's really where the big problems lie. And I also think it's you know, again, in terms of the bigger picture, having, you know, what can we do with these dollars and where do these dollars fit into everything, which is kind of another set of goals. You know, what's the bigger picture of our waste center. Other comments, questions about this?
Rob, if you don't mind me jumping in, so just to be clear, for 2015 then in the budget, we will not anticipate any partnership, so the board is aware of that in terms of funding for the recycling centers. We should also then be trying to develop a scope of work around the zero waste concept. And when I envision the zero waste concept, it really does encompass everything that would be coming into the landfill. So I think it's right in line with creating that broader strategic vision. I think both of those go hand in hand, and part of that needs to be the feasibility of being able to deal with those waste streams. So we should be also within the budget looking at least setting aside some funding and then working with the board on the scope, you know, make sure that scope is credible for a zero waste study. Also going back to our partners and talking to the city and such about partnering and funding on that. So you'd see two changes in the budget. On the revenue side, you know, not anticipating that partnership at this time, then on the expenditure side, looking at a broader study to set that broader strategic direction and plan. I just want to make sure we captured that correctly with you guys.
George and then Michael.
And I would say that I think it's critical that the city is a partner with us in this, not only in this study, but in terms of moving forward in terms of the use and the cost of the Rio Grande. If it wasn't located in the city, then it would be a different issue. But looking at the numbers in terms of city use and commercial use, there needs to be some cost sharing. And you know, back to Steve's comments and Rachel's, you know, Basalt, I suspect that that very small percentage of people from Basalt who are coming up utilizing recycle centers because they work up here, and they're just traveling up, so it makes it easy. I certainly don't see, for myself, going to Basalt or Eagle County in terms of helping with the funding of this. Eagle County, of course, they weren't very pleased when we went to single streaming because that impacted their cost centers.
Yeah.
So, but I think the city is a critical component in terms of the study and addressing how we want to achieve these goals for the entire community.
Michael?
Yeah, I actually disagree with that. I don't think the city is a critical component. I mean, just as we share, it's their land, we have a recycle center, we're in charge of resource management. resource recovery. Whether the city wants to participate, I don't think it matters. And I think it's a stumbling block to having a really good program. I just don't. If they want to join in, fine. If they don't, fine. We'll continue to go on. The one thing they could contribute is other sites. I think that's worth talking to them about. But in terms of money, if that's going to be a stumbling block to this program, I think we just forget it. Stop asking for it. We've asked for it, we've asked for it, and we've asked for it, and they've been resistant and resistant and resistant. So let's forget it, at least for the time being. Let's get going with this project. What I really don't understand is we just dedicated some funds for the expansion of the landfill, and now we're talking about
Not putting anything in the ground.
Not putting anything in the ground. So we seem to be pushing and pulling here, and I'd like to get that cleared up. In fact, there's a lot of pushing and pulling going on here. So I don't understand really. I don't think we have clarity, and I can understand the city, balking because there's a lack of clarity here. So I think we need clarity in our program.
Well, in a budgetary manner to this, with the push and pull, is the landfill has got a finite life, and whether we get to 95%, 80%, 75%, or whatever, that finite life is still looming out there at some point, and the value of land in our community raises just as high. So it's going to be replaced. The land appreciates just as much as the value of replacing it today. So it's a dollar that could be brought back to today's money in terms of what the replacement is. So it doesn't matter how far off in the future it is, because the appreciation is still going to happen to some extent. Rachel?
Yeah, in general, I think we have a little bit of direction in terms of really developing a good RFP, scope of work, goals that we're trying to accomplish, and how to get there. I feel like I need to say something in response to Michael's comments, and certainly entitled to your opinion. We look at things differently sometimes, but I don't feel like we have asked and asked and asked the city. I feel like we've talked to them about it once initially, and when Hillary was still our manager, and the question from the city was, well, how come you're transferring $200,000 a year to your general fund out of the landfill revenues, and you want us to contribute more? And so we've cleaned up that budget aspect. There's been no transfer to the general fund for quite a while. It doesn't throw off any money anymore. And, I remember when the city's landfill manager came in when the city was doing that mandatory waste hauler ordinance and said, oh, don't do that, it'll upset our recycling program. We won't catch as much and we won't be able to make the money we used to. But that was when markets were actually profitable for recycled materials, and they have not been for maybe a decade now. It's a changed market. And so I think that we are partners with the city in many ways, and that we haven't made our case, frankly, and we haven't had the clear goals, and we haven't had the larger context of why this is there. And I think that right now there is at least some interest in the city because of their Canary Initiative and their general self-sustainability issues, that they're willing to work with us on this study to say how could we cooperate better to achieve these goals. I think the city acknowledges that it's the larger single concentrated waste producer in the county, and I don't think there's I don't want this meeting to come off as bad blood against the city. They've never helped us out, and they provide the land for that center, which could easily be expanded park, or could be more skate park or something like that. And they do some cleanup over there, and they do a little bit of back and forth with us. So I just wanted to put that out there, that I think we haven't asked them the right way to the dance, and we haven't had the music playing, as it were, to even begin a good dance on this recycling issue.
Rachel, are you posing the question that maybe we should have an ask for the 2015 budget?
No, I'm not. I'm saying I think we should proceed with structuring the scope of work and jointly preparing it in a way that they would like to participate in the study.
Yeah.
And that we absolutely continue the funding of the landfill now. And then we have some larger joint discussions. You know, again, I'm not so sure we need to get down to a zero subsidy program. But I also don't think we should let it costs eat up the money that we're going to need for landfill closure, for landfill master plan, for the new facilities out there, to replace the aging facilities, things like that.
Other comments, questions? Staff, Steve?
I think we're doing the right thing. We're on the high road doing the right thing for, you know, increasing our recycling and decreasing the cost, and so there doesn't have to be as much hauling like with the wastewater management thing and all that. And I think discussing how to make the program better with the city of Aspen is really bring them into that discussion. I think that's critical. Maybe they'll see to take the high road too, and you know, put some money into it to help the program be more successful.
Michael?
Yeah, you know, I want to do things with the city of Aspen, but I don't want a stumbling block to be and ask for money. So, fine, let's talk to the city of Aspen. I'm not saying don't talk to the city of Aspen, but I'm saying don't predicate the success of this program on whether or not we get money from the city of Aspen. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, no, I can understand that and support that. But it's likely the study may come up with things the city should do more. And if they've been a part of the study, then, you know, I think they'll have a little more buy-in into those results. Two less things. You know, having, again, been someone who worked on the road and created a lot of recycling materials, it very well could be that those basalt residents come up here to work, but then all the materials are left over here. You know, why haul them back down there when they can empty the truck out? You know, or midday empty even. I mean, it's likely they're generating that material up here as opposed to just hauling it up and going back to work in basalt or something. I don't think that's what's occurring. And I did want to mention that I've had a phone call from a resident in Redstone who was concerned that the bins have not been emptied enough to actually continue recycling up there. And her concern was that the first Thursday and the third Saturday that she's driven to the center, and after those have been done, you know, and the bins were still full, and she had to just drive back home and take care of it. And so I don't know if we need more outreach or communication in that area, but I definitely have had calls from citizens who were not able to recycle in Redstone. A citizen.
We were aware of that situation, and there was an incident where Waste Management's dispatch didn't send a driver to empty it. Waste Management wrote an apology letter.
Okay.
There was one incident, so yeah, we were aware of that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm glad to know that.
Yeah.
Steve?
Maybe some kind of an on-demand emptying system in Redstone would work, where some resident there could just notify Waste Management or notify you when they need new bins up there. And maybe that would be the way to do it.
Well, for special occasions beyond the two scheduled or something like that, if they, you know, you could have one person fill all the bins almost, or one business in the day sometimes.
Okay, so we'll wrap
You
up.
have the
So-
direction you'd like?
Yeah, what I'm going to take from this is we'll get with the city of Aspen and to kind of develop kind of where we want to go on a scope for a zero waste overall kind of strategic plan, and kind of get their input and feedback. And then we will look to try and budget that for 2015 to start that plan. These can take a year, 2, 3 years. So.
And the only thing I'd add is we should also probably be reaching out to our other municipalities that we're also involved with, and so
Yeah.
just to be comprehensive.
Mhm.
I mean, they may or may not be funding partners on the study,
Right.
but that they're included in the scope of work.
Input, yeah. Okay.
Great, thank you. The grant from the Bureau of Reclamation?
Yeah, Rob, I'll start off introducing that and hand it over to Kathy. First, I'll apologize. I had a different cover memo in here for today, but it looks like the same AIS went in for Tuesday and Wednesday. But what we have in front of you today is a work session on what is an emergency resolution for tomorrow to accept a grant from the Bureau of Reclamation for a feasibility study on what to do with the basically the water that we anticipate would be produced from our proposed septic treatment system. The reason this is coming to you as an emergency ordinance, or resolution, I'm sorry, is we're reaching the end of the federal fiscal year, and this is a similar situation that we have with the airport EA that you heard recently, where we're coming to the end of the federal fiscal year. The Bureau of Reclamation is working pretty hard to get grants out before the federal fiscal year ends. And we actually had a request from the Bureau of Reclamation to go ahead and approve a resolution accepting the grant prior to us having any notice of grant award, so that we could be sure that we are in a position to accept the grant should it be awarded. And I turn it over to Kathy to talk a little bit more about the scope and where we are with the Bureau of Reclamation now. But just to be clear, we had a cover memo that explained that a little bit that didn't make it into your packet.
Okay. Yeah, so back in May, we submitted a grant to the Bureau, and we were awarded that grant in July. The Bureau indicated to us that we were one of the highest scoring grant applications they received. They actually asked us to use it as an example to hand out to other potential future grant proposals, so we were very proud of that. We've been spending the last couple months kind of going back and forth. They don't always accept kind of what you put in the initial plan. So we finally got it settled out in August, and just yesterday we got the agreement. We asked for $149,500. We ended up getting $124,259. So that's a pretty significant award. It does not go to any construction of the septic wastewater treatment system. It's simply to study that effluent use that we have that will be happening at the landfill. We've discussed it multiple times. We can't use all of that effluent at the landfill, so we need to come up with a plan to get the remaining water off of that site, either for sale to construction companies, or the last input would be to put it into the Roaring Fork River. So that's what we're going to be spending the next 18 months on. We just got the agreement yesterday. It'll kick off in October 1st. So, and they indicated to me last week, September 2nd, that they needed a signed resolution by September 19th or we wouldn't get the funding, so therefore the emergency. So we'll be back tomorrow with the actual resolution.
Questions? Steve?
I'm a little bit puzzled why the Bureau of Reclamation is the one involved in that. That triggered in my mind the thought, is this going to be somehow involved in the waters of the U.S. discussion that's going on with the basically produced water that we would be producing at the landfill? Would that fall under the waters of the U.S. guidelines? And that's just something else to consider aside from this contract with the Bureau of Reclamation for the feasibility study, but it's an issue that could pop up in how the whole system's designed or something. I'm sure the SGM people will be on top of that discussion, but maybe make a note to see how it relates to the waters of the U.S.
Okay.
Rachel?
I'm supportive of pursuing the grant, and I'm glad you've brought it forward, and I just think it's really important that we make sure the study is sized appropriately. You know, it seemed to be a lot more affluent than you had originally anticipated once you talked to the haulers, and you know, I think we should have a whole series of tiers of ways that we can use the water. You know, I think it's not going to be a single solution, and we certainly should have some sort of working arrangement with the sand district that should we produce so much, you know, that they'll run it through the final treatment stages to be able to release it in the Roaring Fork. Things like that.
Absolutely.
Michael?
Kathy, would you talk to Mark Fuller of Rudolph Water and Power Association? Because we've been trying to get grants from the Bureau of Reclamation for aquatic nuisance species for years and have not received a dime. And to see, and that's for the preservation of Rudolph Reservoir. And to see this grant of $124,000 and $259 is just stunning. It just.
Well, I have to give a big kudos to Jack Johnson, because he really helped me. I could get the technical stuff down and just the finesse of the writing, I think, really what propelled us to get this grant and make it such a high-scoring grant, so.
Awesome.
Yeah, and I would imagine that they're totally different funding sources. You know, this is a clean water, how do you keep your water clean program versus aquatic species. When I was back in DC a few years ago and brought this issue up on behalf of Rudai, I was told that they're spending their money on the research about how to kill them, how they propagate, where their habitat is, and so they weren't, quote, funding individual projects. But I agree very much with Michael that it seems to be overlooking something pretty important.
And I just note for the board, in last year's budget, you approved a small amount for us to go out and look at our capital plans across the board for grants. And we engaged Chase Park Grants, I think, to help us really look at that and identify where we had the highest feasibility to pursue grant funding, whether it's for capital projects, for facilities, or roads, land. And so that helped us develop a strategy. And then our landfill staff was able to execute on that strategy for this grant. And so this is some of the fruits of taking that approach. And so we'll certainly let Mark know how we pursued that and why. And this one grant is well in excess of 5 times, I think, what we spent to bring this home. So that was a good investment.
Very good.
Great.
We'll see you tomorrow.
Well, that was quick. Oh, we may get out to lunch early today. We'll see how the next few items go. Do you want me to go into memos of interest, Ron?
Yeah.
Okay. MOIs, you really just have one thank you letter from Independence Pass Foundation. That's for funding received through their grant requests each year. So that is really the only MOI we have for you today. Any questions on that?
No, it's great to be part of that organization.
Future agendas, again, items are getting filled in as we move along. You'll see on September 16th, we created a little bit more time for the facilities update and caucus discussion. So we moved that agenda around a little bit to start our executive session at 10. It is only for an hour. Our concern is if we have items come up between now and then, would the board be willing to start a little bit earlier if we have a little bit longer executive session?
Sure.
I'm not sure that's going to be the case yet, John. I still need to go over the agenda for that, but that's a possibility. And you'll also see, per our last discussion, we did add the site visit on Tuesday, September 23rd for GSS. Other than that, we still have some thin agendas going out on our, particularly on our Tuesday work session. This isn't unusual, as staff is really focused right now on budget planning activities and meeting on that and getting ready for our October 15th kickoff with you guys.
Woo-hoo.
Yeah.
October 15th or
I'm
14th?
sorry. It's October 14th. October 15th is our statutory deadline. We're going to get it one day ahead.
So, and our statutory deadline for that is to approve the revenues and expenditures, is that?
On that, it's actually just that you have a budget introduced and
So
available for public inspection. So
Okay.
at that time, we'll go over all of our updated revenue projections. We'll go over our initial set of recommendations for appropriations and expenditures. And then really between then and mid-December is when we continue to refine that initial proposed budget through a set of workshops and then finally public hearings on the budget.
And it's not in our future agendas until October 28th to really get into departments
That's when we're gonna
of the
start
budget
doing that.
stuff,
Yeah.
so. Because I know last year we had to have a couple of special dates set for getting things done in November. And I just wanted to be prepared for that.
Yeah, and we're trying to get all of them scheduled. Last year, we ran into timing with the holidays. I think that didn't work out as well. I think this year we're looking at being able to do those on Tuesdays. Unless the board comes up and needs some more information or a great deal more discussion on a particular item.
Any other future agenda stuff? Rachel?
Yeah, I'm not seeing it on the page Tuesday, October 14th, but I will not be at the EOTC meeting on October 16th. I'm going back for family memorial services. And then I also didn't see it, but I have it in my calendar that you had previously asked us, would we consider having a work session on Thursday, November 6th on the budget, because we are not working on
That is
Election
correct.
Day.
That is correct.
So we need to make sure that we all have that on our
And that, we
calendars.
just haven't hit that time frame yet, but thank you
Okay.
for reminding me on that too. That would be the one exception to the Tuesdays.
Yeah.
And I don't think I'm going to be here on that Thursday. Yep.
Well, I did notice, John, that after September 16th, we really don't have any executive session time scheduled through the entire month of October.
That'll change.
Yeah, so in terms of planning.
Okay.
And then the only other thing that I wanted to just remind people that on the 23rd, we've got the GSS site visit to start out the day. So we'll either meet down there or there is a meeting time here to drive up, and we can coordinate that next week.
Yeah, and I guess it's just a footnote, but, no, never mind. Make it work later.
Open discussion.
Just real quickly, Jim Elwood has officially departed us, so just a reminder for the board that Monday, Thursday, and Friday mornings, I am spending out at the airport right now, working with Brian Griefey and Dustin Hobble during the transition. We're still anticipating that our application deadline will close on September 21st, and we'll evaluate our pool of candidates at that time. And we're going to be coming back to you guys. You had asked about the recruitment process and the board's opportunities. We're going to be meeting later this week with HR and our consultants to set up a series of panels and such, and so I'll be able to bring that back to you guys and talk to you about what that process is going to look like and what our touch points are. Other than that, that is all I have for open discussion.
Anybody else open discussion?
You know, I had forwarded the board a response or comments that the Division of Parks and Wildlife was looking for in terms of a conservation easement. And John Ely couldn't be here today. I know Laura's here, but I talked to Dale Will this morning, and Dale would like to spend a little time with John first and maybe perhaps come up with some comments to forward on for that proposed conservation easement. And so that could happen tomorrow or next week.
Yeah, and I know they're working on that.
On that topic, and I don't have the email in front of me, I think there was a deadline that they were going to be making their presentation and wanted our letter before then. And I think I forwarded on to the board that I had email Perry Will to tell him that I could not make the barbecue that they invited all of us to. And he had said, darn, you know, wish I could see you because we want to talk about this letter we need. And I just want to make sure that they've received some sort of formal contact back from the county other than my responding to a barbecue invitation. And you know, I said that we had forwarded the letter to our staff and would be discussing it this week. So I don't know if we should definitely add it to the end of tomorrow's open discussion or something, but I do think they were under a little bit of a deadline.
I think what Dale, maybe you could answer, Laura, but Dale said it was like mid-October.
Yeah, we still haven't seen the document. I haven't, but we'll make sure that we get comments in before the deadline.
And that we formally contacted him to let him know we're looking at it.
We're going to, yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Other open discussion? Laura, did you have something here?
No, I was just here if the board had questions about that particular topic.
Yeah, Rob, I just add in, just to make sure the board caught that Eagle County did add some topics for our discussion this afternoon last minute. It looks like they'll have some questions about our Healthy Community Fund tax. I don't know if they're
Thinking of their own.
considering that themselves or collecting information. I'll be prepared to talk about that. Nan and Mitzi aren't available to make the meeting this afternoon. And then they had added the basalt affordable housing, which is something that we had actually talked about possibly also. So we're going to have a pretty full agenda of items for the board to go back and forth on. Just wanted to be sure you saw that. There's a lot more bullet points on there than last time we talked.
That's great. I'm glad to see they've added some items.
John, there's an item here. Healthy rivers and streams. Water education.
Okay. I had that under the wrong item. Healthy Rivers and Streams as a complimentary registration for the Colorado Foundation for Water Education Trans-Basin Tour, September 22nd and 23rd. If any of the board members want to go, if you could let Charlotte know.
22nd and 23rd?
It just really doesn't work with our schedule
Yeah, it
because of all the Tuesday work session. I'd already let them know I couldn't, and I've seen some of that
Yeah.
ground before, but I really would like to make sure our Healthy Rivers and Stream Board members know that it's available to them if any of them would like to attend, or other staff who work on these issues for us.
But John is speaking at it.
Yeah, yeah. They're mostly looking through the Arkansas Valley and starts in Colorado Springs and goes around. But, you know, it's up to this board, but if we have that as a complimentary registration available and we're not able to find anyone in the city of Aspen, you know, we may call Mike Medill or, you know, city leaders as well, because they're certainly our partners on these diversion issues. But if we really just can't find anyone to use it, I would think about offering it to the Colorado River Basin Roundtable and see if there's one individual there who would like to participate on it or not. You know, just to get it used.
On the Healthy Rivers Board, Dave Nix was planning on going on the tour, and Lisa Tasker was considering, was urging her
Great.
to go on it. So there's, I think, at least a couple of them going, but definitely we should get people involved in water to go. I would love to go, but it's, you know, it's totally not possible this time.
I agree.
Okay.
Looks like we're going to
Any
have a
other?
long lunch.
We'll be back here at 1 o'clock.
Thank you.
Welcome back, Tuesday, September 9th, 2014, Board of County Commissioners, Pickens County, Colorado work session. We're coming back from our lunch break, and we're going to jump right into our Valley Health Alliance update and hear about all the work that's been going on about the new creation.
All right, thanks, Rob. And I am very excited to be in front of you today and introduce Kathleen Killian, who is the new Executive Director of the Valley Health Alliance. And Kathleen's going to tell you a little bit about herself and a little bit about what's going on with the Health Alliance today. But Kathleen has joined us all the way from St. Louis, and I think, as you're about to see, is really hitting the ground running, bringing this cooperative initiative that the county, quite frankly, was a big part in getting started to fruition and starting to get our programs on the ground. So Kathleen, welcome, and I'll turn it over to you.
Excellent. Well, thank you, everybody, and I really appreciate the invitation today. I'm here 4 weeks. My family's on both the East Coast and the West Coast, so basically they told me to pick a team, so I got closer to the San Francisco side of the family. I spent most of my professional career in St. Louis. I'm a physical therapist by trade and was a senior executive for many years, serving BJC Healthcare and Washington University School of Medicine. My specialty is orthopedics, which seems to blend very well with this community and the issues facing this community. I managed the medical agreement for the St. Louis Cardinals for 12 years, so I don't know how many of you are Cardinals fans. I have a brother who's an Olympian as well, a swimmer, Sean Killian, and so I'm no stranger to elite athletes and managing their conditions in the orthopedic world. So very excited to be working with the 5 large employers that make up Valley Health Alliance, and have met some great people, assimilated into the community, still dealing with a little bit of the altitude issues, but I'm very, very excited to be here. So, and yes, we all hit the ground running. So what we have here is a presentation, kind of our best current thinking and what we've done over the past month together as an alliance, and really rolling up our sleeves as well in working sessions. So I really appreciate the opportunity to share this with you. So this is not the document.
Is that not the document?
We might just have to stay with this now.
But no, and as John's trying to find the version 3, there you go. There you go.
Sorry, I got
Here we are. Here we are. It's all good.
various Valley Health Alliance.
Excellent, yes. We're keeping John busy, and so this is the version 3 of our iteration that the board has been working on, and we've really worked to refine our mission statement that you can see before you. What makes us unique is that we are a collaboration not only of providers, but a hybrid of providers and employers, which is very, very unique in the country. And people, my colleagues, scientists from WashU and from the CDC and NIOSH are very interested in seeing how this relationship and this evolution, how it fares moving forward. So we're really excited. And here's our vision. We really believe this as a board. We meet people where they are in their journey to improve health, whether it be an elite athlete, an 18-year-old young person, someone who's overcoming cancer, someone who's more mature in age. So we really want to meet people where they are in their journey to optimal health. And then these are our values: caring, resilience, accountability, engagement, trust, collaboration, stewardship, and sustainability. And this is what our board and your community, my new community, really believes in relative to healthcare and promoting health. And so here's our value proposition. This is what makes us different. We provide a very unique vehicle for collaboration among employers, employees, and providers to improve the health. So working with the healthcare providers and physicians in the community as well as the employees is really important. So I asked our board, my board, what does success look like for Valley Health in 2014? And we had a very spirited dialogue, and we want to and will launch our brand and imaging campaign probably within the next week. We will implement a unified health risk assessment using Mayo Clinic's tool. We're going to offer a unified biometric or health fair experience at each of the respective employers, and the county and the city have already selected their date, October 30th. And our success barometer is increasing participation by 20% over last year's participation. So that's how we'll know if we're successful. And then we want to implement a unified flu shot campaign as well. Working closely with the physicians, the medical executive committee, other private physicians in the community, Paula Cattison, who's a member of the board, to develop medical protocols and clinical pathways that optimize efficiencies and reduce multiple redundancies in care and really ultimately improve costs. So we're very focused on this. Developing our website, our social media strategy, and then also, most importantly, developing a scorecard that we can share with our community to really demonstrate how well we're doing relative to our goals. So last week we had our first VHA employee focus group. It's probably the best 2 hours I've spent since I've been here in a month. John, no offense, relative to my meetings with you. But we had asked the 5 employers to designate 5 frontline employees from each of the respective organizations, and Kate Fuentes was very generous and offered her boardroom over at the high school, and we served them lunch and asked them many questions about, do they have a primary care physician, what do they find valuable in the community relative to the healthcare experience, what are some of the barriers and the obstacles that they encounter, they and their families. And it was just tremendous. It was just a great group, very honest, very candid, very passionate. And we asked them to select the final logo for VHA. We started out with 9, the board whittled it down to 3, and we asked our employees to choose the logo, and this is the logo that they chose. They said that it reminded them, the ribbons around the aspen leaf reminded them of connectivity, of community, of the words that they use, all encompassing. So they were very, very excited. They were like, are you sure you're going to have us pick the logo? So we're like, yes, absolutely. And then our tagline, they selected as well. VHA plus you equals making our health a priority. So they were very, very proud of that. They actually rewrote it to reflect their current thinking. So it was really a lot of fun. So, and then this basically describes a summary of the focus group. And I plan on conducting focus groups with employees and physicians at least 2 to 3 times a year. That's my goal. And then here's an example of our scorecard. Now again, this is a draft, and this is a hybrid of some of the scorecards I've developed and utilized successfully in other markets. But I wanted to give our board and the community a sense of what we'll be capturing. So for all of the employers, we'll be looking at the Fab 5, as we call it: blood pressure, blood sugar, cholesterol, whether you engage in tobacco usage, do you have a primary care physician, BMI and blood pressure are going to be critical. And then also the interventions. Are we going to target smoking cessation, or weight management, or exercise initiatives, lunchtime learnings? Aspirin initiative is something that we offered for employers in St. Louis. And then also the evidence-based campaigns that we know, based on science, preventing colon cancer, preventing prostate cancer and breast cancer. We know that those things are very, very important and preventable, so we really want to monitor that within our population. So that gives you a sense of the scorecards. And then tracking our attendance and participation over time. And then we've worked closely with all of your constituents, communications and PR, to develop a comprehensive communications plan, addressing all the key stakeholders, internal and external. And we will be working with the board and others to implement this over the latter part of the year, and then of course through all of next year. So let's get started. I'm excited.
Questions? George?
Well, first, welcome.
Thank you.
I'm sure John is very pleased that he's off the hook, and We got a new
Thanks,
director.
John.
He might be on more of a vote.
I don't know.
So I think this is really exciting to get this off the ground. My question is, you talk about the relationship between employers, employees, and providers. At what point do we engage the insurance companies into this process and get them buying in? Because ultimately what we want to do is see our premiums go down
Right.
for all these organizations.
Right. Now, and George, that's a great question. I've been heavily engaged with Lockton, spent probably about 2 hours with them over the past couple of weeks. And I spoke to the TPA for the schools and the ski coach this morning, and we're going to meet. I've already looked at the data for the city, the county, and the hospital, and it's really interesting. We're starting to look at low-hanging fruit opportunities and then the big high bar reach opportunities. But that will be part of our strategic plan, is looking at the utilization. We already know that musculoskeletal injuries are very high. We already know that MRIs are overutilized. We already know that there's an excess usage of physical therapy and chiropractic. We know that we need to look at pharmacy. So I'm starting to see the hot pockets. And then you're right, working with Cigna and the other carriers and the TPAs, it's going to be really, really critical to hold their feet to the fire as well.
And George, I can't remember if we updated the board on this, but the 5 employers who are part of the pilot project right now, previously all, I believe, well, of the 5 employers, I believe there were 4 different broker teams who were looking at what are the opportunities to make adjustments to health coverage, incentives, and that sort of thing. The 5 employers have consolidated down to 2 brokers, so the City of Aspen, Pickens County, and the hospital are all using the same team to look at our insurance benefits, what levers we pull, how we integrate with the efforts of the Valley Health Alliance to improve healthcare results, and also then tracking what's the cost benefit curve look like to those. So there's been a lot of consolidation out of the discussions up to this point, and so all the employers definitely have their eye on that ball, because healthcare costs have been going up at a rate that's usually 2 to 3 times our revenues, and so that's the structural issue that we're trying to address to make healthcare sustainable, and hopefully the practices that we find that bend that cost curve will be applicable to the whole community eventually.
Well said.
Rachel?
Yeah, echoing George's comments, thank you very much for being here. And, you know, it really sounds very much, I've been in a few of the early meetings with John, that you really have the talents and skills and grasp to marshal this effort forward and make sure it doesn't stay too amoeba-like. And I think there's been good headway made before to get to this level, but this is great.
Good.
And I have a question, then a couple of small comments, but how do we, or us, determine what overuse really is of chiropractic care or physical therapy? I feel like I know people who've had an injury and they're like, yeah, I only got 2 more sessions in physical therapy, or yeah, now I'm paying it for myself because I'm still injured. And you know, who and how do we make that determination of what is overuse?
Well, it's a 2-pronged answer. So one, the clinical protocols are very, very important. So that doesn't mean that it's cookie cutter. It just means that we're getting the best and brightest physician minds together and ancillary health minds together to come up with the best protocols based on research, based on historical evidence nationally. So that's one. So in developing protocols for low back pain and neck pain, I really believe that we could narrow some of the overutilization. But looking at the insurance data and looking at the TPA data, they have national norms and national averages.
TPA?
Third-party administrator, excuse
Thank
me.
you.
And looking at the data, the consumption and the utilization data compared to state and national norms, these are way out of the boundaries of what's considered normal. for the same type of diagnosis. So I'm sure it doesn't capture every single incident, but for the majority, I mean, we just really need to pay attention to those outliers and really go after them and understand, to your point, what are the issues, and then look to remedy those issues.
Thank you. Then I go to my comments, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, Club 20 has a healthcare subcommittee, and they did have a hearing this summer. One of their topics was this whole geographic rating issue, because there have been concerns by other counties that we're now a part of that perhaps we're going to push their rates up, they being a larger county. Really nothing came of that meeting other than let's see what the rates are this fall, and let's have a further meeting about it in, I think, February. But I described with a very brief overview what we were trying to do here with the Valley Health Alliance. And Marguerite Salazar, the insurance commissioner, who was there, stopped me afterwards and said that is exactly what we all need to be doing if we're going to get a handle on this. And so she was very supportive of those efforts, and it just struck me that perhaps at the February meeting we could give a brief presentation of what our efforts are as well. I don't have that date with me exactly right now, but it's mid-February, and I think that would be a good opportunity to both share what we're doing, and it may ameliorate a little the fear of us being in their zone for geographic ratings when people can see what we're doing to bring costs down.
Right, no, excellent. And by then, we will have completed the entire biometric experience for the 5 employers. We will have that data. We can look at that data and identify risks. We will have blended and kind of cross-reference that with the insurance information. Also, the employee focus group, their feedback is very, very important about utilization. I mean, they were saying it's hard to find a doctor with an open patient panel or that has convenient after work hours or Saturday morning hours. So access, we know, is an issue. Mental health is an issue. So once we get all of those ducks in a row, we will come up with our 2-year plan. And I was very impressed with the Pickens County strategic plan and the visual nature of what you all are focusing on. And we'll probably mimic something similar to that, looking at the HERO survey that was offered by Mayo that each of the 5 employers took, which graded them on a scale of 1 to 200.
And for our viewing audience, HERO stands for?
It's employee
Health.
Yes, health. Yes, Nan, are you gonna? It's an acronym for employee health interventions, basically.
Okay.
And so the 5 employers were scored on a scale of 1 to 200, and we're going to go back and look at those gaps and look at the biometrics, data, and then look at the insurance utilization, and then compare all this, and then come up with a plan.
And so then I know, again, some of the earlier discussions were about eventually perhaps having a shared health coach among 5 entities participating. Is that a potential once this work is done as part of that 2-year plan?
Yes, that is. And so what we're looking to do right now, we're using the Aspen ambulance to implement the health fairs. If anybody is identified as having something emergent or out of the norm, they will be contacted immediately by Aspen Valley Hospital and then referred accordingly for care. And then we are working with Nan's group and the public health area who have care workers or health coaches, that we don't have to reinvent the wheel. Perhaps we can use the existing infrastructure. I don't want to build an infrastructure that competes
Absolutely.
with the great reputation and the great work of Nan and her colleagues. So perhaps there's opportunities to cross-reference. That's why we're using Abbott Ambulance for the health fairs, because it's a low season for them, and why add cost and infrastructure to a system that's already very credible and very effective. So. Excellent, thank you.
I have a question about just the makeup of the 5 members that are involved with this. What sort of insurance programs do each one of them offer? I mean, we're mainly self-insured here.
They're all self-insured.
They're all,
Yes.
are they self-insured to different levels? Are they, I mean, because the cost savings comes directly back as long as they can work with the insurance on companies on the protocols that are used. But it's out-of-pocket expenses for the variances of health of the individuals in terms of the companies, that
Right.
are supporting these employees. Sorry. So I don't know if you can,
Maybe I'll jump in
Yeah,
and lead
please.
on that one, Kathleen. So one of the reasons we selected the 5 employers to pilot these types of efforts is, one, all 5 are self-insured. All 5 are also large, and that was important because the 5 employers need to be willing to take a little bit of risk to try new things. Right now, though, all 5 employers have different strategies about how they implement their self-insured plans. So we're going to have different plan designs, different deductible levels, different maximum out-of-pocket levels, different expectations as far as what is reimbursed at 100% versus other percentages. And one of the things that I think we'll probably see and have a discussion about is how do we start to converge on plan design and the levers that we can pull as employers, because how we structure our plans, what we compensate, what we don't, creates a set of incentives for our employees in terms of how they use the healthcare system. And so what I would imagine is that down the road, these 5 employers are probably going to converge in terms of their health plan design, because that's going to be one of the key tools we have to encourage our employees to use one practice that's shown to work and maybe discourage others that don't.
because that really gets to that cost-benefit curve for the individual employers, the organizations.
Yeah.
And along the line of what George was bringing up is really bringing in the insurance companies into this to fit the plans so that they match what we're doing to provide a healthier community.
That's right.
Steve?
John, what percentage of employees in Picken County are covered by are employed by the 5 in the Valley Health Alliance? Do you have?
Wow, that is a great question. So the total number of covered lives, which is actually what I'd look at, because we're including the spouses that are covered and adult children and such, and this is just under 5,000.
Right.
On an employee base, I'm guessing we're just right around 3,000 with that, Steve. Now, in Picken County total, there are about 21,000 jobs. So we're probably still at only maybe 15. I'm just 15. Yeah, 15 probably to 20%, depending on the season. Because our jobs fluctuate a lot. But to be honest with you, I'm doing that math in my head right now based on what I know of census data and what I know from Kathleen on VHA. But it's it's a small sample size, but those 5 employers spend just north of $20 million a year on health care, so it's large enough from that perspective in terms of an insured pool to get everyone's attention.
Yeah, and it could have a big impact on the community. I'm thinking of all the dozens of little businesses like Rob's Restaurant, for instance, that I'm wondering how they could somehow get some of the benefit from the Valley Health Alliance just by the measures that are going to be taken by this group. And there would be sort of maybe a synergy effect or something that could, help the whole community.
Well, I'll go ahead and put words in Kathleen's mouth since she's here, but I think there's probably a few ways that happens. One, if there's going to be practice changes made in terms of, as Kathleen's talked about, care pathways, how you progress through if you have back pain or maybe depression or whatever you're dealing with. If practices are adopting that to meet the requirements of the 5 employers, it is likely that those practices are going to be adopted for everyone that they're serving in the community, I would think. And so, in some sense, I think the community will start to feel some of the changes that are identified through the Valley Health Alliance. The second way, which is a little bit longer term, is once we identify practices that work, and what I think, because we've been getting this question a lot from ACRA and from other organizations that want to be part of this, is once we identify practices that work, if we can package those, we can provide those to the community just on a basis like we're doing it, on a per member per month basis or some kind of basis where they can come in and be part of practices that are shown to work. What we haven't wanted to do, Steve, is invite smaller businesses and such into basically doing research and development for us, because if anyone knew what really worked to bend the cost curve, communities wouldn't be having these discussions and we wouldn't be creating these alliances. And so, in all honesty, we're going to try some things that don't work. We're going to spend money trying some things that probably don't work. And we're going to spend money finding things that do work. And when we find those things that do work, we're going to keep doing them. And I think we'll try and find ways to make those available to the community more broadly. We've got to get through the pilot, and that's what the 5 employers have committed to, a 3-year pilot to try and identify some of this low-hanging fruit, some of these practices. And then once we identify what works, we can start to make that more broadly available. And we can start another research and development phase and keep developing this. What's unique, I think, about this, as Kathleen pointed out, is who's at the table. There are a lot of health alliances. What is unique about what we're trying to do is the combination of having the employers, so those and the payers at the table, as well as the providers, the doctors in the hospital, and also having our community represented. Nan is one of our representatives on the Valley Health Alliance board to represent those broader community interests. But we've been trying to keep it focused on the pilot and trying to keep it. It took just the 5 employers 18 months to start talking the same language with the providers and the hospital to move this far. And hopefully we'll build something new and that doesn't just work here but works in other communities as well.
And Steve, I think that's a very thoughtful question. We're going to be very diligent and scientific in our approach to limit some of the liability that John referenced, so that yes, we may make mistakes in certain areas, but hopefully they'll be minimal, and then we could be agile enough to readjust and then refocus. But what's really critical too is getting the physicians to the table and creating modules and a financial incentive that we want to work with the physicians that want to work with us, that are efficient, that have extended hours, that are customer service oriented, where the individual walks away feeling empowered rather than degraded or otherwise compromised. And then those that are efficient, that will keep costs down based on their efficiency. So we want to really rally those providers in the community that want to step up and really work with the VHA.
I just add one more thing. The health risk assessment, which is really what's going to be, we're going to be talking a lot about this fall. This is the first time that employers in the Valley have cooperated on a health risk assessment, and that we'll be able to consolidate data and do that analysis across a whole population. Individual employers have done different health risk assessments in the past and had different interventions. And this will be our first opportunity to have some economies of scale, or a joint effort, a cooperative effort, to also identify, okay, here's what we're facing together that's driving our healthcare costs as a community. Let's invest together in some solutions that work for our community.
And the great news, having these 5 large employers, as other employers come on board, there's not going to be a lot of variance to the experience. Their experiences are probably going to be very, very similar to that of these 5 employers. So,
Additional question, George?
You talked earlier about addressing perhaps duplication or unnecessary procedures. And I wonder, given that you've got 2 hospitals in the valley, with Valley View Hospital down in Glenwood, and you've got doctors who have privileges at both hospitals, and Valley View putting together a new facility in the Mid-Valley. Have we had any discussion with Valley View in terms of their participation at all, or is that premature?
no, and actually I hope I'm not sharing a kind of a fun secret, but no, Valley View has approached me and also Aspen Valley Hospital, and they're very, very interested in coming to the table and expanding the provider platform for the folks that live down Valley. And so that's going to be critical. You know, when we look at access, it's about convenience. I mean, most people for basic health care don't want to travel beyond 7 to 12 minutes in their local geography. Either it's work or it's home. So we want to make it convenient for people to do that. And so yes, they're interested, as well as others, in coming to the table to expand the provider platform.
The other side of the coin is for Aspen Valley Hospital and Valley View, they're in essence, they're competitors, competing against sort of a very small, limited pool of customers. So
how do we navigate that?
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so one of the strategies for that, so we're not fighting over the same ACL reconstruction, that we are looking at centers of excellence. So we look at not every facility, not every physician is all things to all people. So we look at the centers and what they really excel in, and really designate and funnel volume and opportunity to those centers of excellence. So for example, up in Aspen, it's orthopedics. They have a whole wide range. They have cancer services, but they don't have a PET scan. So for a patient that needed a PET scan, obviously would go to Valley View, or a cardiac cath would go to Valley View. So there are services that do not overlap, that we would identify as centers of excellence to kind of mitigate some of that noise of competition. But competition is good. I mean, that keeps quality up and it keeps costs down, and we want to keep that spirit of competition alive in the Valley. So at first blush, that's what we're looking at, though, George.
Oh, thank you.
Additional questions, comments? Rachel?
I guess it's just a kind of a footnote for future meetings or whatever, but I saw a blurb in the paper or online about the initial rates for 2015 policies on Connect for Health for the Denver area, and it had said that that area is receiving the largest decrease in the country, almost. So, and again, I apologize, I read a lot of things that pass it through. I'd love to see what we can get in terms of updates once the rates for Connect for Health Colorado are released this fall, because that's going to be coming up fairly soon. And, you know, how we're going about that open enrollment period as well. The one thing I think I've asked, and I'm not sure if it was here with Margaret Salazar or whatever, but at what point will we start to measure the impact to the hospitals in terms of the reduction of indigent care or non-payment of the bills from people who did not have coverage? And so it'd be really valuable to start seeing what effect the expanded Medicaid is having on uninsured receiving services. I mean, and that may be more our human services than your work, Kathleen, but, you know, it's just so we're all moving in the same direction and not duplicating the work.
Right, exactly.
Steve?
One other Medicare system in the Valley, which I am part of, is the Veterans Administration healthcare. So I'm actually in the county plan and in the VA medical care system. And they do a lot of cost-cutting kind of preventative care kind of things, like doing flu shots and shingles shots and things for free, because it's better to keep people from getting sick than having
Right.
to treat it later.
Right.
So that would be something just for you to be aware of, that there are people, veterans in the valley who take advantage of that, even though they might be in another healthcare plan also.
Thank you for
And,
that.
Try to work out, at least be aware of what they do in terms of preventative care and what they offer at the hospital in Grand Junction.
Will do.
And I don't know what percentage of employees in the 5 companies, but certainly there'd be a certain percentage that applies to.
Absolutely.
Great. Thank you very much.
So 4 weeks, so far so good? You're not going to send me back to St. Louis? Not yet? Okay.
But you might have to wear orange in the future.
Okay, I was loving that dress, yeah.
She has the blue.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody. Really appreciate the invitation.
About 5 minutes ahead of schedule, but can we jump right into the Grand Avenue Bridge?
Sure.
This GR loads up here. Good, you? Great.
Feels like ski season could be coming, huh?
Certainly was not scooter weather.
Yeah.
What it was. If you want, just give me like a, or actually this should work.
Cool. Slow down over there.
Yeah, just, okay. 12 minutes of spots here. Okay. And then there's a, it's corner. It's interesting.
Right.
Is there anyone interested?
All right. Well, thank you. My name is Joe Elson. I'm the CDOT program engineer for the central program area in Glenwood Springs. And I have with me Dave Eller. He's my boss. He's the regional transportation director. So, and we also have Tracy Truelove. She's our communications manager based out of Glenwood Springs. She's sitting behind us. So, do you have anything that you want to say before we get going, or?
Yeah, just that these guys are here to talk to us about the Grand Avenue Bridge Replacement Project. They've reached their 60% design milestone. Moving forward, they're looking to shore up some funding and also giving us a good bit of information of a project that impacts the valley-wide transportation issues that we have. So,
Great. Well, I have a few slides, and feel free if you have any questions as we go along. We can take questions as we go, or wait till the end. Anything you want to say, Dave?
No, just thank you all for allowing us to come present to you. I think we were here about a year ago talking about the Grand Avenue Bridge, and where we've come since that time is we're getting closer and closer on our cost estimating, final design. Like Joe said, we're at 60% design. We do have limited faster bridge funding that's been dedicated from Board of Directors for Bridge Enterprise. We're finding that we're a little bit off on where we projected estimates, and Joe will talk some about that. We've been working with our stakeholders, local communities that are impacted mostly by the construction of the bridge, talking to them the situation we're in, if there's partnerships. We'll be going to our Board of Directors Thursday of next week to talk about where we're at. We've been told pretty loud and clear that the bridge enterprise funding is limited right now. So we're at a situation we're trying to keep this project on track and whole with the preferred alternative that's been put in place. Some of that includes accelerated construction, and Joe will talk about some of that. So really what we're doing is trying to keep everything together and not cut things out of the project. So as we go through it, that's really why we're here, to let you know where we're at and to see if there's any questions, and also look for any kind of local participation before I go present to the board next week on where we're at with total costs.
Okay, with that, this first slide is kind of an aerial, of course. You know, this is looking west, the river flows that way. You know, when we first initiated this project, we really just anticipated we'd probably be doing a simple bridge replacement right in the existing footprint. You know, we even used some of the Maroon Creek Bridge pricing and then escalated that up. That was a very successful project up here. We really appreciate Picken County's political and financial support on that project as well. This is going through an environmental assessment. We're getting close on that. We hope to publish the document still, late summer, early fall, and hopefully a decision document in April. Again, with the idea of having the bridge replacement right there. As we started into the stakeholder development, of course, there's about 25,000 vehicles per day that travel over this structure. It was built in 1953. We started looking at alternatives. I think we went through a lot of those last June when we were here, maybe a couplet design and then, different things that all just kind of, went to our touchdown point, which is basically in this area. We also took about a half a dozen alternatives from the public, and I'll show you in a few minutes what the preferred alignment is that's being recommended as the preferred alternative in the EA. Basically, it takes off from here and it cuts across and it lands right here. So there's more extensive right-of-way, acquisition costs, utilities, drainage, a lot of things had to change with that. But what really drove the selection of that was, the tourist area for right in Glenwood, of course, is right through here, and of course up here in the Upper Valley and other places. But a lot of the hotels are situated out here, and I think anyone who's driven through here sees a lot of pedestrian tourist traffic coming down, crossing 82 or walking alongside Highway 82 and getting over here. And by moving 82 off and really eliminating this signal and being able to take the pedestrian phase out of this signal by putting a separated grade underpass, we're able to increase efficiency for the Upper Valley here really quite a bit, and really the Upper and Lower Valley. So with that, it's always good to touch on the purpose and need. Again, multimodal connectivity, and again, I think it's good to really state the extents of it, because I think if you're reading the Glenwood paper, there's certainly a lot of push for the bypass or relocation of Highway 82 being considered, and that really is far beyond the scope of this project. This is about a bridge replacement. It's a poor bridge. It's being funded largely under our 2009 FASTER legislation to just address either rehabilitate or replace deficient bridges. So it's really important to key in on where it extends to. So it's downtown, and it's connecting the Roaring Fork Valley with the Hot Springs Pool area and Interstate 70. The functional deficiencies, again, those are related mostly to vertical and horizontal clearances. When that bridge was built in 1953, it was as a two-lane bridge with sidewalks on each side, and it was widened in 1969, and the lanes are only 9 foot 4.5 inches wide. So there's really there's a lot of side swipe accident data with that. There's also vertical clearances with the UP Railroad, 7th Street. There's also an issue, anyone who follows the I-70 Mountain Corridor, PEIS, may be aware of, this is the western extents of that study, and all the interchanges within that area from C-470 to exit 116 in Glenwood on I-70, all the interchanges got looked at, and most of them had some deficiencies, which is to be expected with a resource that's typically 40 plus years old and had a design life of like 20 years at the time when it was built. So the on-ramp is shorter than it really needs to be to meet code. So that's another thing that's being looked at as we go along. Emergency services are always important, and reliability is a critical route. So here's some of the things I just talked about graphically. Here's a truck straddling both lanes because he's a little unsure of fitting himself into the 9 foot 4.5 inch lanes. Here's a sign that was underneath the bridge at the Glenwood Hot Springs, warning people to be careful because things have fallen off of our bridge onto their, luckily just onto property and not onto people. I have a counterweight on my desk. It's one of these tops of the guardrail that landed in one of the Hot Springs patrons' cars, right smashed through the back window. Again, here's just some of the concrete. It has reinforcing steel. You can see it there very clearly. It's corroded. The concrete is spalled off, and it allows you to see it. The regional need for the bridge, again, I don't think it's really, this is surprising news. When Independence Pass is closed, particularly, there's really only two ways out. Most people are coming over this bridge or using Midland and going over to exit 114 using a local system, or you're going over McClure Pass. So it's clearly a need regionally, we believe. Scour is certainly a concern. The bottom, the river pier that's right in the center of the river is only about 5.5 feet below the bottom of the river. Back in 1992, there was a report. They sent some divers out, and they reported a scour hole that went down about 7.5 feet, so about 2 feet below the spread footing. I mean, there's no piling or drilled shafts or anything like that. Our local experts feel that probably happened in 1984. It wasn't a 100-year storm, but or runoff year, but it was a pretty big one. And it matches up fairly well with the calculated 100-year scour profile, which is about 3.5 feet below. So definitely some risk potential there.
Did they fill it back in with something? I mean.
Yes, our maintenance forces were able to fill it back in with existing material. So, but always great questions, Rachel.
Thank you.
So here's the build alternative. Again, here's just the graphic that we've been showing. We also, if you happen to be in the Glenwood Springs City Hall, there's a 3D model that we had constructed just to be able to really show people, because sometimes this 2D just doesn't quite get it. So here's the existing bridge outlined. There's 6th and Pine. That's the Hotel Colorado. You stop there, you come across. This is 6th and Laurel, and then you come out to I-70 and go west or come east. So we need to get up over the railroad tracks, and 7th Street will be about 3 feet higher. The bridge will land about where it is right now. I think the actual, where that grade break will happen is about 50 feet south of the existing. And it's going to be wider. Again, the old bridge was 40 feet wide. This is about 60 feet wide. So it's actually 56 feet in this area right here. So, it's going to fit a little more closely into this area. It's going to add about 8 feet on each side of the actual vehicular bridge. So the pedestrian underpass that I spoke of is right here. This will really help people that are coming, from the Rio Grande Trail, coming across and possibly wanting to go out and use, the Glenwood Canyon trails out this way, or just to get into downtown. So the traffic will be basically decimated here. It'll be about 1/10 of what you see there right now. It'll really make it a lot nicer kind of area for pedestrians and multimodal. A new pedestrian bridge is part of this build alternative. It wasn't considered at first. That existing bridge is owned by the city. It was built in 1985. It's a good bridge. What really got us looking at it is all the utilities that cross this one, and I'm going to show a slide about the accelerated bridge construction here shortly. Those utilities need to be off of this bridge and relocated before this bridge is built. So that got us looking at putting them on the existing PED bridge. It couldn't handle it. There's issues with that existing PED bridge. I spoke about this on-ramp and the deficiencies. Two things that keep this from happening are the bridge pier for the vehicular bridge and the superstructure, the actual frame of the pedestrian bridge, stops that on-ramp from being built. So we started looking at, well, you know, how about a cost-sharing situation, and we're actually getting some money in from the utility companies toward the construction of a new bridge. There's also the aesthetic piece of it, of, you know, we're going to build, you know, not an iconic or, you know, terribly lavish design. It's really going to be something like you'd see in Glenwood Canyon. It'll be a box girder, steel box girder. It's constant depth. It's not varying depth, things like that. It's really a pretty straightforward structure. Let's see, here's our accelerated bridge construction. I think I showed this to you last June. Again, here's the existing bridge. We can build this whole blue section really out of traffic. We're going to have some closures and some pretty creative detours, hopefully mostly at night with I-70, but we can get this into place. We'll also build foundation elements for this green section and build it basically downstream of where it's going to go. And then when it's time, we'll do whatever things we can do in this section, but there's not much because it's right on top of it. And then we pick the closure period, and we're targeting that as approximately a 90-day closure period, non-peak. So we're trying to avoid Memorial Day to Labor Day, trying to keep that as, you know, having 4 lanes going across. It's a little bit longer than I think we told you last year when we were up here. I think we were targeting 60 days. It's just as we've gone through this with our construction manager, general contractor, or CMGC contractor, we have them under contract to help us with risk and looking at the design and trying to make things as constructible as possible, and also provide pricing. That's what they're coming up with based on their analysis so far. So at some point, we're going to say, okay, with plenty of notice, Highway 82 is closed, and we'll run people through a detour that's going to take you down to West Glenwood, and the published detour route will be this 8th Street connection. So here's City Hall, here's Garfield County where the BOCC meets, and, you know, right now to get across the river, here's the Roaring Fork River, there's this bridge, and then you go on 7th Street, and this is 7th Street. What we're going to do is remove the fill from the Rio Grande right away through there, and with cooperation from RAFTA, and institute that detour and then put it back when we're done, so that we don't have any kind of a use on that 4F property. The city, I think, is still interested in doing a larger project. They're looking at different alternatives, and right now our 2 projects are separated, but that's basically the alignment of a straight one. They're also looking still at one that swings north and one that swings to the south, as well as one that would be straight. So it's a cheaper detour. That's good news. But at some point, you know, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It's going to be tough. We're going to have to, you know, really implement some traffic demand management. You know, you guys in City of Aspen are really the leaders, probably in the western states, for doing that, to get people out of their cars. You know, right now we're projecting that it's going to add about 20 minutes, you know, to get from, if you were here, to get to where you want to be on 82, that when we're running this, it's going to add 20 minutes, and that's if we can get sufficient, like a 20% reduction in the traffic, the Highway 82 traffic. So, you know, I know one of the comments last time we were here was, well, if we're going to do it in the spring or the fall, why don't we pick the fall, because then Independence Pass is clearly open, and, you know, it's one more outlet. We're still looking really hard at both options. If we do the fall, as we're completing the the closure and trying to get the surfacing onto the completed bridge. You know, you guys know it better than we do in Glenwood.
Asphalt?
Well, yeah, and we're looking at polyester concrete, actually. You know, that it's getting colder and it's getting snowier. So if we do it in the spring, as we continue towards Memorial Day, at least the weather's getting better. But, you know, we know about how important it is to get skier visits accomplished through that route too, and we know that, you know, March is a big, really big month for ski co up here, so it's a balancing act right now. So we keep going. Here's just an image of what we think it's going to look like down underneath the plaza area. Again, you're looking south here. This is 7th Street. The railroad tracks would be right about here. This is one of the things that we heard. Extensive stakeholder involvement on this project. At the very first public meeting, we heard a lot about, let's make this area under the bridge a lot nicer. Let's, you know, it's kind of a dingy, pigeon infested. We can't have a meeting about the bridge project without talking about pigeons. So, you know, this is one of the areas where it's going to look a little bit better. There's alleyways that cut through here. You'd actually be able to look and walk from one alley straight through underneath the bridge. So it'll be extended about, I think, 70 feet, and just, you know, a little bit nicer area. The pedestrian bridge, again, this went through quite a screening process, and actually this slide's a little bit out of date. This shows a haunched girder, so it's the thickness of the girder is not uniform. It gets bigger as you get further out. That's usually associated with a longer span. It's actually a little bit more utilitarian looking. It's constant depth girders, weathering steel. You know, we're going to be talking to Garfield County and City of Glenwood Springs later this afternoon about funding commitments from them to try to be able to keep it as nice looking as it is. So you're not alone. Let's see which button. So here's a slide. George probably remember this from the Intermountain TPR. This is pretty close to what it's showing up with our 60% pricing. And how it's kind of broken out. Again, we're using the CMGC contractor, so we're getting pricing from them. It's a process, you know. They're not going to give you their best number right off the bat, and some things they just don't know about. It's, you know, we have to keep the plan development going, you know. We've also got an independent cost estimator that sets our engineer's estimate, and that's an entity that they're typically people that have worked for contractors. They've bid work, they've built work, they get it, and that's who we match up our contractor's price with, and it has to be within 5%, and they get 3 attempts to get us there. So that's really it for the slides. Thank you, and we're ready to take some questions.
Questions? George?
A couple of questions. So the budget is at 60 million, but that's really not the true budget.
Construction budget. Sorry, I should have been more clear about that. That's where our construction pricing is right now. I wouldn't call that 60 million a construction budget. Again, we have a contractor. We don't want them to fixate on a budget number. You know, I don't think any of us that does contracting wants the contractor to go, okay, that's the number. They got to worry about what our ICE is coming up with for an independent cost estimate, and there's a lot of risk on this project. You know, you've got the Colorado River, you've got the Union Pacific Railroad. You don't have a lot of room to work. We've got the Hot Springs Aquifer down below. The $98.6 million number that you've probably seen in the paper that the Colorado Bridge Enterprise has listed on their website as being allocated towards this project. We're trying to stay within their confines and hold with that number. There's been increases in costs against all the phases, really. The environmental phase, the design, the right-of-way, the utilities, and the construction. Actually, the construction's probably holding better than any of those other phases right now. So
But the bridge fund has allocated 98 and change million towards the project.
Right.
So that's from the bridge fund. So where's the gap, the difference that you need that's not in the bridge fund, that the Region 3 TPR came
Right.
up with $3 million to help, not only help to fill that gap, but to show regional support for the commissioners so that they don't reallocate any of those dollars to another project, perhaps on a front range.
That's correct. So I think our slide at the time was showing about a $9.9 million number. Again, that was before it's been a bit of a moving target, and we wish it would settle down a little bit. We're also trying to hold a little contingency as well, but we're looking at, the $3.3 million from the RPP, or Regional Priorities Program, that was at the end of June, I think or end of July, we talked about that. We're coming out, we've already talked to Eagle County once, again, we're talking to Glenwood Springs and Garfield County this evening. We're really trying to see if there's any local support that can be gained through local agency contributions. We're going to go after grants, probably assisting locals with like Federal Mineral Lease District or DOLA grants, things like that, faster safety funding. HES, which is part of our hazard elimination program. It's a federal program that looks at cost benefit where you have an accident history. So we're looking at, really all the little kits of, sources of money on the state, federal, and local levels to try to make up the shortfall.
But I'm still a little confused, and maybe Dave, where is the shortfall?
Yeah.
What is that number? Where is it
Commissioner, I
coming
think the 60 million is a construction estimate for biddable items from where we think the contractor's going to bid. It doesn't include our construction management cost. It doesn't include the right-of-way, the environmental, the design. So right now, we feel with those projections at the 60% level, we're between 10 and 15 million dollars over our bridge enterprise budget. So we're looking at a project in the 110, 115 million total budget. Okay, so when we look at the bridge enterprise of 98.6, that was total budget for design, right-of-way, utilities, everything. Some of those costs have been driven. Joe talked about the pedestrian bridge. We didn't anticipate a new pedestrian bridge. That's almost $10 million in itself. Right-of-way costs, we thought we owned the right-of-way, or Glenwood owned the right-of-way that the existing structure's on, and we don't. That was about a $12 million overage on the right-of-way side of our budget. So there's a lot of things that have made up why is the budget over. But right now at 60%, we think we're around that $60 million construction estimate, which puts us at a total budget around 110 to $115 million. Now, of course, those dollars are still being negotiated, and we're still working with the contractor, and we're only at 60% design. But that's the best guess where we're at 60%. And I shouldn't say guess, it's pretty good science, but we think we're about 10 plus or minus $1 million off of our budget of Bridge Enterprise. So that's what I have to go back to Bridge Enterprise and say, well, we think we can make this. We don't want you to pull the Bridge Enterprise money. Is there any more Bridge Enterprise? We've pretty much been told that the Bridge Enterprise is limited for this project for multiple reasons. The faster legislation for Bridge Enterprises has to go to these deficient bridges. There's plans for all these deficient bridges. We're taking more than 1 year's worth of funding just for this project. There's other projects such as I-70 East that are coming in, and they're saying that's the plan. We have this money committed to these other structures, so we don't have any more money. So the Bridge Enterprise has pretty much told us that's how much we budgeted. You're going to have to figure this out. Either cut things out or bring other kinds of funding to the table. And that's pretty much what when we presented to the TPR, that this is significant to everybody, all of the counties in Intermountain TPR, and they all agreed that it's a significant project. So we allocated some funding there, which made up $3 million of the overage. So we're still, we think we're maybe $8, $9, $10 million off of our budget. So we have not figured out how we're going to make that up yet. That's where we're really at. We could cut things out. some of the things that Bridge Enterprise has talked about, well, should the Bridge Enterprise be paying for a ped bridge? Should they be paying for these pedestrian improvements? We've convinced them that's the preferred alternative. That's what the community will support. Without it, we don't think we have a NEPA document that's going to be supported by this community. So we think it's critical that it is part of the project. But that's really where Joe's faced, is how does he, if we have to start cutting things out, what's it going to be? So we're trying to keep it all in there.
Yeah, I mean, of course, once you get the community involved in terms of designs and wants and wishes, of course, that, you know, that wish list really, there's no end to it. But if you have limited dollars from the bridge fund that's being allocated, it seems like you have to find other sources of funds for sort of these other amenities. But I also think it's, and you could probably answer this, it seems like it's, to me, it's a little unusual, and I don't know whether this has occurred anywhere on the Front Range for any of their road or bridge projects, that where they see a need for a project and they're a little short, that they have actually gone out to the local communities to ask for financial support. Has that ever happened in the past?
Certainly from the aesthetics perspective, I think the rules of Bridge Enterprise are 5% of the budget towards aesthetics, is that right?
Typically for a project, it's 5%.
No more than 5%. So this piece of, well, if you want iconic bridges and things like that, and the locals participate. So certainly, but I'm not sure that you could say that this is a real aesthetic bridge, that it's not blowing the 5%. It's the other things. It's the connectivity to I-70. It's the pedestrian connectivity that's really driving cost here. So that's really where we're at, is we don't feel it's something we want to cut out of the project.
Probably a good example would be the Eagle Interchange project, which is, you know, certainly it's been the topic of quite a few Intermountain TPR meetings and prioritizations, and, you know, that the whole pre-construction budget was split really 50-50 with the town of Eagle. So, you know, when we had a 100% or about an 80% set of plans, that's when we decided to go to a CMGC delivery method on that, really to try to take care of stakeholder interests and address utility issues coming off the heels of the Edwards Spur Road, which was, you know, I think one of the county commissioners had described that project of like trying to refloor a basketball court while a game is in progress. You know, it's just hard to kind of move things around, and we found that, you know, by getting the contractor involved with the phasing and utilities, it's really been going a lot better. But I think there's about a $3 million local contribution on that.
That's a good example. The pedestrian bridge is being built there. Really, Eagle County, the town of Eagle funded that pedestrian bridge. So that was an example of where they've contributed money to get that pedestrian bridge as part of the overall project.
Right. Similar to what we did with CDOT for the underpass.
Absolutely.
So I guess my question perhaps for John is, because I asked this a while back, is, I mean, I see the importance of having to replace this bridge and the impact it has on our valley, from the worker force to our tourists to just supplies coming in and out of the valley, whether it be groceries or other basic staples. But would something like a request that they're coming before us now, would it be appropriate to be able to utilize EOTC funds if the EOTC deemed that was worthwhile to utilize those funds? Versus, I think right now, I'm guessing that you're coming to the county, and the county would have to look at utilizing general funds for a project such as this, or funding.
Right. I mean, based on what I've heard of the request so far, it'd probably be more of a general fund request, but I do think it bears some discussion about what transit components, and we have some multimodal components. Clearly, in terms of flow and such, I would expect that there would be some efficiencies for the transit system. Has the EA, or would it be possible to look into the EA for potential impacts, hopefully positive impacts, on RAFTA's programs and the transit system that we share in the valley here. And I don't know if you're prepared to comment on that at this point.
You know, it's not like a true easy to identify transit component. I believe that RAFTA right now does not run over that bridge. They utilize the side streets to get around, mainly because of the narrowness of it. It will be built to standards, so they will be able to do that in the future. But you know, like clearly the Maroon Creek Bridge, we added the width, and again with Pitkin County help, a great deal of help, and then the city came in with their own project for the bus lanes and built the bus lanes, you know, interim solution to the entrance to Aspen. But we just don't really have the room for, you know, it's not a mobility purpose and need. That's why I think it's always good to show that purpose and need slide right up front. It's really address the functional and structural deficiencies and try to, you know, hit the connectivity, multimodal connectivity.
So George, what makes sense about the EOTC model is all the communities involved in the EOTC, I think, are positively impacted in the ways that you said. I think we need to draw a pretty strong correlation to transit to use the EOTC funding, you know, as it was approved. One of the things that I think, you know, the board needs to consider is probably any contribution we make in and of itself isn't as important for getting this project over the finish line as much as the opportunity to leverage, to show the region-wide support when CDOT staff is back at the state requesting funding. And so I may have missed it, but I didn't see a specific ask in the documents. Did I miss that?
Right here.
Where is it? Oh,
First page.
It's an R number. What? GR was guessing. You know, and so really, that is a big amount for us to swallow. I don't know what your plans are for going to other jurisdictions. What is probably more important than that specific amount is if the board is willing to show some level of support for a regional project, and we can always come back for the amount, you know, at a future date. I think what you're looking for right now is some positive indication about our willingness to participate, and then we can work out whether there is a transit component, even though that sounds thin, that we could go to EOTC, or whether we want to look along with the other communities that are positively impacted, Aspen, Snowmass, at some at least level of contribution to send the message about the importance of this infrastructure, if that's what the board feels.
So we may, if we're not able to utilize EOTC funds, we may be able to forge a different partnership with our fellow communities, municipalities, to put into a pot and saying, this is what our contribution is from the Upper Valley. Versus just the county. I think that number from the county is way high for me, given that we don't have the ability, as you know, to even maintain our own roads and bridges up to our standards we would like. And so, but I think at some level I would be willing to support it. I think, and as you'll make your case to the commission, you know, Region 3, they stepped up big time because all of our communities in Region 3 basically set aside projects that have been on that list for 10 years to put this at the top of the pile to get this done. And so from all the counties, Summit, Eagle, Garfield, Pitkin, we've put aside our projects for the better good of this project. So I'm sure, Joe, you'll make that strong argument. So for me, that's really the strongest argument, because we each have already given up substantial funding opportunities for projects that each of our communities need. but I would be willing to look at, with some partnership with our other municipalities in the valley and counties, to say this is still important to us, and at some level, whatever that level that we feel we can bear, to show our, at least for me, to show our support.
Rachel?
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for the presentation, guys, and your work in trying to bring this to fruition. A couple of things that are easier. You know, I really don't have a preference over spring or fall. That's a determination you have to make. I'm not sure that the percentage of people from the upper valley who use Independence Pass or who use that compared to the overall traffic flow would make much of a difference, as opposed to impacting March for our ski season or Glenwood Springs busy summer season as well. So that's your call. I don't want to be involved in that. I think that we've all seen what's happened nationally with tragic, catastrophic bridge failures. And that's the game we can't play. I mean, that would put us on that bypass for 3 years while a bridge is being constructed. Or even the less than a catastrophic failure of a weight restriction. And suddenly you can't, each food delivery truck is coming with half a load and the price is double to the restaurants. You know, a weight restriction is the next measure when you have a deficient bridge that is starting to crumble underneath. And so, you know, you could have lane restrictions. You could have it taken down to 1 lane in each direction. I mean, there's a parade of uglies, as they say, by not acting quickly enough. So I'd like to see what we can do to take care of that. And, you know, considering the effort we've put in and you've put in helping us with our Airport Business Center pedestrian underpass, I certainly wouldn't want to be one to see a pedestrian overpass on this project eliminated. I mean, I think it's equally important to our whole valley's perception of a pedestrian community and walkability and use the Rio Grande Trail and all these things. So, you know, that's just a component that makes it work, and it's necessary. I think that we should, as a state, and possibly additionally as individual areas most directly affected by this, see if we can push through the new reauthorization of the safety loo that's going to be coming up in May federally. And that, you know, can was kicked for another 10 months this fall. Instead of doing a 6-year reauthorization of funding, they only did 10 months. And that's put all transportation planners and road planners in a really difficult position for these multi-year projects. We just don't know what federal money's coming, how, when, whatever. So I know they've, quote, eliminated earmarks, but they do have things like state priorities that they somehow slip a little extra money into one way or the other. And I think that that is really worth a full court press with our current Senate and congressional delegation to have some funding there for that, especially given the historic nature of the town and scenic and things like that. So there may be some real opportunities there. Overall, we all know the shortage of CDOT funding for a long time. The revenue source has not been raised 1 iota since 1991, and it has been eroded constantly by construction costs going up, more fuel-efficient vehicles, so on and so forth, electric cars. So I'd love to see a question to fund CDOT on 2016, you know, and we will be in the middle of this, but that's why these guys are begging and coming to hat in hand, and it's inappropriate. It's inappropriate as a state that we don't fund our own transportation systems enough. And if we were starting to look at the new revenues that are coming down the pike because of that failure as a state, it's starting to be toll roads. You know, all the planning in the future is you want your road improved, here's the toll you're going to pay on it. You want more capacity, here's your toll road you're going to pay on it. And I'm just glad these guys aren't sitting here designing a toll bridge for us to use, you know, and think about what kind of mess that would be. But, you know, so no, I don't want to have to hit our general fund, and we're tight. We manage our budgets really tightly, both personnel and everything else. And you guys may not be aware of this, but we have had a local initiative in place pre-Tabor that's called the Fenton Amendment that has limited our revenue collections and expenditures without a vote of the people. That's more stringent than Tabor, and it's been in place pre-Tabor. So our budget has never been able to grow or, you know, capture these great sales tax gains without lowering our property tax revenue and things like that. So we're in a bit of a bind. I'd like to think that if we're able to come up with something, we could do it over several years and make a commitment and find a way to work in some amount of money going forward, because this is probably a fairly lengthy process for the construction. And, you know, I know we did something where we advanced the money for the roundabout here, and when CDOT had the money, they paid us back.
Right.
Those sort of deals are no longer entering into, but it's, you know, perhaps we could enter into it on the other side to say we make a commitment of X amount of dollars and we'll pay it over X many years. I do think that this would be valuable as a topic for an EOTC presentation. And even if we're, as the body's not deciding on using EOTC money or not, but to kill, you know, 3 birds with 1 stone, to have had a chance to talk to the elected representatives in in Aspen and Snowmass about it at the same time. And if they're considering whether it's coming from their general fund, as you said, George, I think that's a great idea. Perhaps we just cobble together an Upper Valley contribution, as opposed to you guys trying to hit up every municipality in the valley for can you give us 25,000? Can you give us 50,000? And what's so-and-so putting in? You know, so I think that there's value to considering that as an agenda item, whether it's this meeting or a future meeting. Then I think we could certainly work to negotiate some sort of pro rata return if there's unused contingency to all the different non-CDOT entities that put money in. And so, you know, there might be a way that we have that up front. And, you know, if money's saved and you don't need that last $3 million, how is that returned to the people who've agreed to put into the hat? But otherwise, I'm very supportive of this. I think it's just critical. I mean, people just don't even begin to understand the magnitude of economic downside and how much money would be lost if we were to lose these sort of accesses and these connections. So I think the number's high, as George has said, but on the other hand, it's important that we're participants, and I'd like to see us participate.
Okay, thank you.
Michael?
Yeah, I agree with Rachel. I think particularly Rachel's strategies on a multi-year donation, and also if there is an underage, that there's some return. And when I first came here, it was 1964, it was on the train, and to think that that area is completely unchanged. It's exactly the same way. There's more brew pubs. The bridge is the same. The station is the same. It's unbelievable, quite frankly, that bridge hasn't changed one iota. And if you stand underneath that bridge and ponder that bridge, your photographs really don't do justice to it.
You don't want to stand there very long.
Yeah, I mean, it's really in sad shape. And it's too bad the community hasn't put money aside over time to replace it. Since 1964, there would have been plenty of time to do that, but they haven't. And so I endorse with some of the strategies contributing to this. Plus, you know, we really have an island economy up here. An island without an ocean, but an island separated from the world. We don't produce the food that we consume. We don't produce the fuel that we consume. We don't produce the building supplies that we consume. They all come over that bridge.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's of vital importance to us. And I think it's of vital importance to Glenwood to have a vibrant downtown, which I think this is going to do for Glenwood. It's going to really lead to some significant changes for them, and that's going to be good for the rest of the valley. So I'm in full support of this.
I too am in full support of this, you know, to some level. I love some of the approaches that Rachel brought, including looking at how CDOT gets funded in the future. Say I'm also in support of that because of the diminishing rate and the projects that we've seen so needed in this community, and the struggle that CDOT has had to come to the table, and they have come to the table in this community to the best that they can, but they're being pinched in other sides. You know, I reiterate what Michael says about the island community. We're worse than an island community. We've got access points and those access points can get cut off. In Island Community, you got an ocean, you could take the boat around those access points. So, you know, I mean, we've got it with our airport, we've got it with Independence Pass, we've got it with this down valley transportation route. So it is crucial, and I do think that there will be some sort of contribution from Pickens County, or at least that's what I would be in favor of. How much, you know, that's hard to say. We're about to enter into budget season here. That'll give us a big picture of a multi-year budget type thing. But it is essential, and I think it's beyond, you know, tourists coming into the community. I think Rachel wisely made the point that, you know, this is our channel for supplies as well. Our supplies aren't coming over Independence Pass, and they're not coming in through the airport all that much.
I don't think we'd even get mail delivery if that bridge failed.
So there's a lot at stake with this bridge, and I think well, you've got my support to try to make this project work somehow. We've got to obviously make our budgets work here at Pickens County and weigh the values of the community from our budget standpoint as well. So,
Great, thank you.
Steve?
Over the weekend, last week, I had 3 different conversations and letters from people from the Glenwood Springs area, and I'm sure you're aware of them. Some of them calling to, you know, try to find a different Highway 82 route through Glenwood Springs. And the only way I could conceivably see that would be having a 2-lane on the existing railroad right-of-way, and the other lanes coming down the existing Grand Avenue. So a split Highway 82 going through Glenwood. If that were done, a smaller bridge, a narrower bridge could be built farther downstream and just straight across the river, feeding into the railroad right-of-way. And perhaps the existing bridge could be used for the down valley traffic. Just would be a one-way bridge then with half as much traffic on it. What's your thoughts on that?
You know, the topic of using the historic Rio Grande rail corridor that's controlled by RAFTA has certainly come up. You know, back in 1979, Centennial Engineering actually put a feasibility study out that showed a way to do it. And it involved kind of flipping the way that interchange, call it exit 116, how that works. You know, right now you go down the ramps and then you connect under. So because the rail, you'd have to get up over the Union Pacific rail grade, so you'd have to kind of flip the interchange so that the connector road was on top, if everyone's following that. And we actually looked at that just because we knew it would come up in these kind of conversations, and actually our bridge alignment would actually work better with if something like that were to be done in the future. You know, there's certainly there would be quite a public process to look at that whole mobility issue. I hate to call it like a bypass or a relocation. I think it really needs to, you know, you guys really seem to get that better up in the Upper Valley. It's a mobility issue. It's about moving people, not necessarily more cars, right? So maybe it is a transit solution or whatever it's going to be, but it's going to be, you know, our little circle, you know, the first image that I showed you, that's really pretty much our study area. And, you know, the study area for this bigger thing would be more like the one, you know, your map on the wall of Glenwood Springs and how it connects out to the west and things like that. And, you know, I think there was a letter to the editor just this past week that one of the business owners said that discussion's, you know, going to make this bridge discussion look like a pillow fight when it gets into, okay, where is it going to go, you know? And what's it going to look like? Is it 2 lanes? Is it 4 lanes? Is it a couplet? Is it, you know, in whose backyard kind of thing? So I guess to answer your question, it could probably mean a less wide bridge, and it would take that other thing to get, you know, a connection over to the rail corridor. But there's certainly that, looking at the historic, working with RAFTA, it's really a well-banked corridor, is my understanding, that, you know, at any point, you know, tomorrow, someone could come in and say, okay, we're gonna
Put a railroad.
we're gonna reactivate the rail line, so complications like that too. So.
Well, and I would add to that, it's been a big debate about why not spend this funding on a bypass or build a bypass. And I think we've said it over and over in the newspaper that this funding, as we talked about, the $98 million is legislated through faster bridge enterprise money. So that funding is basically earmarked for bridge replacement. And that's the only thing it can be used for in the state of Colorado. So we're here today trying to figure out how we're going to make up $10 to $15 million. That type of money for a bypass, we're talking probably $200-300 million. There is not that kind of funding in transportation. And Doug Aiden, you know, your highway commissioner, was at a recent Rotary Club. He said, you know what, seeing that in the next 10 years is a pipe dream with our current funding. And I don't know that it went over very well, but I think he's saying it as best he can say it, that kind of money for those capacity improvements at that scale are just so huge. And I know a lot of people would like to take this bridge enterprise money and go do that, but it's just not there. It's legislated for bridge replacement. So we're struggling to make up 15 million. I don't know how we're going to make up 300 million right now. So I think that's really the reality of it.
Looking at logistics, I
We're running a little late on our time.
just two real quick points, and I realize it's past time. I would favor doing the project in the fall, and then maintenance tasks could be kept open longer, going into the winter, than it'd be easier keeping it open longer, I think, than opening it up earlier in the spring. So I would favor doing a fall project on the final conversion. Also, I would favor using the BOTC money. It's the entrance to Aspen is kind of what it is, really looking, you know, 40 miles down the highway, but
EOTC money can only be used if it is a transit component, a real transit component. I mean, that's a restriction on the original enabling ballot. So we all have
And we'll do some
restrictions.
homework, commissioners, to see if there's something there. I think John brought up a good point. If nothing else, we have some real issues during that detour where we need to make transit better. We're not quite sure how we're going to do that yet. We may have to come up with some sort of incentive programs, things like that, and maybe it does tie to EOTC. So we'll do our homework and come back to EOTC and maybe try to make that connection, if there is a connection there. I think it's a good point.
Well, I hope that as you go before your commission next month, at least you hear that we are going to support this at some level. We don't know what the level, how it's going to happen, but the Pickens County Board of County Commissioners do support this project.
I appreciate that, and thank you for your time.
Yep, and just real quick, with a 3-year project, we are moving towards an expenditure-based step that can take money at different years, so 2015, 2016, 2017 kind of arrangements work pretty easily. Something longer, I don't know, that would be a little more creative, but. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
All right, we're going to move this meeting down valley to Algebel for our meeting with Eagle County at this point.
Great.
Are we getting the reverse reserve?
Okay.